All right, let's get started. So thank you everyone for joining this roundtable discussion. We are going to be recording this session, so please keep it in mind that this will be recorded and available through our website. This really is going to be an open discussion. We're going to open the table to everyone to talk, bring up any topics you want to discuss, and really what we see is hopefully have an open, interactive conversation. That being said, if anyone is shy and doesn't want to speak up, we definitely have some topics to talk about and hopefully get a good conversation going. Really quick about XLM Solutions. We're a leading PLM implementation partner of Dassault Systems. We've been around since 2005. We have many PLM projects under our belt with 3D experience plus other PDM PLM systems doing implementations. We have a lot of talent on our team, and for those of you that know us, we do everything from general implementations around PLM, data migrations, customizations, and integrations. And definitely the key software we work on is around the DS portfolio solutions. For those of you who don't know me and can't see my video, here I am. And with that, I am going to actually unmute everyone. So I'm going to unmute everyone. If you don't want to talk or you have background noise, please mute yourself. But I am going to unmute everyone, and hopefully we can have that open conversation. So here we go. All right, everyone. Should be unmuted. However, all right, it looks like everyone's unmuted, but people are muted per their own individual mute buttons. So if, again, anyone wants to talk, you will need to personally unmute yourself, but you should be able to. And if not, please put something into the questions or chat, and we can look into it. Like I said, before I move to the next slide, if there's any topics anyone wants to bring up first or talk about, I'll open the floor. Otherwise, I will, start talking about the topics we have listed. All right, going once, going twice. All right, so please don't be shy. Hopefully we want to have this as an interactive session, and there's a lot of people on the call from various companies, various industries, implementers, salespeople, consultants like myself. So definitely we're here to hear everyone's input. But I have no problem giving you my thoughts around 3D experience as well. So we do have a topic that was brought up called Smart Team Implementation, which is a great topic. And that is a little bit later in my list. So let's put that on hold for now. And we'll get to the Smart Team Migration topic, which we could probably have our own specific roundtable around a little bit later, if that's okay. So the first topic is we just made a very broad, generic topic called 3D experience implementation. And, to talk about that, I'd say implementing, regardless of what you've been told or what you hear, implementing 3D experience is a project. It takes work. It's not a simple task. It really, will involve a company being committed to implementing 3D experience, meaning it will take time, it will take resources, there'll definitely be a cost to it. So, anyone going into a 3D experience implementation should not go into it lightly. They should really plan and be prepared for a large implementation effort, probably similar to a ERP type of implementation. Like we like to say when we're implementing 3D experience is, first thing is really to assess the scope of the implementation. And there's probably many different parts of the implementation. So there's, general setup and configuration, which a lot of it, comes into understanding what is the company's current processes, how they're working at it, what works for them today, what doesn't work for them today, and then how can those processes be mapped to 3D experience. And a lot of times, there's a one-to-one mapping. A lot of times, you can do things better or easier in 3D experience, and sometimes maybe some of the processes that companies are doing today are not doable in 3D experience. So, those are the ones that really probably you need to figure out and understand, and what will happen around those. So, assessing the scope of the implementation is everything from understanding the as-is to to-be processes, understanding what that implementation will look like, what needs to be configured, what needs to be set up to make those as-is to-be processes accomplished. A lot of times there's data migration involved. So there's whole scoping sessions around how the data will be migrated, how it will appear in 3D experience. Security models, what will be the security and access models in 3D experience? How will training and support be done once 3D experience is rolled out? If you're on-premise customers, what will be that hardware installation infrastructure work involved to manage 3D experience? So those are all key topics that should be addressed and looked at, discussed really before starting the 3D experience implementation. A lot of times we'll get called and say, well, how long will it take, or what's the cost to implement 3D experience to me? And the answer is, we don't know. You can't tell until we do some of that assessing and scoping workshop. I'm going to pause here for a quick second. There is a handful of topics around migration, so I'm going to finish talking about this one and then jump around to migration. So I'll go fast here, but if anyone wants to come back to it, please let us know. In addition to managing the scope of the implementation is what I would say is organizational change. 3D experience, how it's set up, how it works, probably requires some organizational changes as well from the organization point of view, in addition to how users will use the system. So you may need more rigid roles or user tasks in the system. Maybe users that could do everything today, it's going to be what they can do. It will be split amongst different users with different roles, whether you are someone that's creating data or releasing data or building a library of data. May involve different roles. Obviously, it's a change. It's a change to how people work in the system. So it will require management, buy-in, management, definitely making sure the organization can change and can adapt to the new system. So, I kind of look at organizational change as the soft skills around implementing the platform and getting the users to adapt and willing to change to use the platform. Resources for implementation. really, it's not just one person that can do everything. It's not one person that will have all the answers. The 3D Experience platform is a large system, so probably there'll be multiple use resources involved. And to name a few, there's a solution architect that I look at. It kind of understands how all the functional pieces of 3D Experience works and can tie things together and do that as is to the 2B process mapping. If you're on premise, there's an infrastructure expert that knows how to install the platform, knows about Tommy, knows about load balancing, knows about certificates, knows about all the infrastructure aspects of running an enterprise software. There may be a developer if you need any configurations or customizations. Obviously, writing Java code or EKL code to put in those customizations. Testers, people should test out and validate the system, and then project management to tie everything together. And we truly believe in a phased approach. Don't do everything at once, but slowly but surely roll out individual functionality in a phased approach. Anyone has any comments for what I said? Hopefully that's interest to you.
I'll agree that it's a phased approach is much more beneficial for the company and the users. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we strongly believe that if you roll everything out at once, A, it's going to take too long to get everything out there. It might be in years. Two, you're going to roll things out and then you're going to have issues. Every implementation has issues, and not know where to point, where that issue is, and the learning curve for the users. So it's much better to roll out simple functionality, get people comfortable with it, and grow from there.
Yeah, the first phase, people will get engaged and they'll see the benefits, and as the word spreads, and then it just helps with the next phase and so forth and so on.
Yeah, like small wins before you easier to sell. To the business. If you start small, you have your quick wins. It's easier to sell it to the rest of the company. Yeah.
I would say that first phase, regardless how small it is, probably is going to be the hardest because it's new. But once people start getting more familiar with it, see it, can relate to it, adding those additional phases should be easier.
Hey, Mark, this is Jared McPherson here. I've got kind of just a general question to the roundtable here. Maybe we'll kick off some more, general discussion here. Has anybody successfully implemented the cloud-based version of 3D Experience with migrated data, specifically interested in migrated data that is not CATIA? And if so, how many users does your company have in the platform? Just give me some general information there.
So I will, if anyone wants to answer that, go right ahead. I will add a couple comments and say migrating data to cloud platforms today, to be honest, does not have a great solution to do it.
Yeah.
There is, and we haven't done it. I don't know if anyone in the world has done it yet, but there is a methodology where you can migrate data to on-premise first, and then from on-premise, Dassault can move it to the cloud. But that is timely and expensive. For non-CAD data, and we haven't tried it yet, but it may be an option. We proposed it to someone. Through a bookmark workspace, you can point it to a folder on the, on your Windows drive, on your Windows computer, and it should upload all the documents in that Windows folder to the bookmark. So that may be a way to load non-CAD data from Windows through that bookmark loading mechanism, which is an out of the box for on-premise and on cloud. Now, that would not get any metadata. It only get, latest revision, whatnot. There's probably still additional work would need to be done to clean it up, but that may be a option for non-CAD data.
Gotcha.
And
Any other companies out there done it? S&C is the only one that has attempted to to migrate data into the cloud-based platform.
You're a brave soul.
Yeah, it's not going so well. Yeah.
No, I bet.
Yeah. Again, I mean, topics come up a lot, and my simple answer, whether Dassault wants, or I guess Dassault should hear it, they do not have good tools to migrate to the cloud today.
There is, and this is Elon Mark's calling. There is for SolidWorks, specifically for the SolidWorks users, there is a built-in tool for the cloud, which we have used with one customer. However,
You're talking about the SolidWorks connector?
It's part of
Well,
SolidWorks.
it's
Yeah,
called FTK File Transfer Toolkit.
well, but I believe it's built in right now. I mean, to the connector. However, it does not support history or any inputs of mapping or things like that. It basically takes files from the network and allows you to upload it some very basic, minimal data loading validation. So it checks that you don't have duplication in the data source, but it doesn't really check if there's already data in the system. So it will tell you if you have duplicates in your source data that you're about to upload, but if that data already exists in 3DX, it won't be able, it's not as intelligent to tell you that there's some conflicts, and you need a lot of cleanup. There's some limitation of a toolbox, but it works. I mean, for a customer that needs to load, I'd say up to 10,000 files. This is what I've personally been involved with from the network. It's very basic, but if you do a proper cleanup, it works. It worked well.
Yeah, we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of.
Yeah, and again, no history, so it's very limited for your smaller accounts. Yeah.
Okay, and so it sounds like. Go ahead.
I think that the hard part is it's not going to give you history, but the bigger problem for most customers is that it's not going to give you the current revision that it is in the system.
Like uploading it as a brand new file.
Yeah, so they're all going to come in as initial revision, and that to me that's
You're not
probably the
migrating
biggest
data, you're
feeling
copying
field.
data.
Yeah, you're just bulk loading, and
Yep.
if you have a lot of files, it's still a good toolkit because it's going to make use of the connector and allows you to split it up onto separate machines so you can run multiple uploads at the same time. But again, the initial revision thing is really the Achilles heel in the whole problem.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a migration tool, it's an upload tool.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
we've heard
Jared, this
rumors that there is going to be a new migration tool for the cloud. We heard it should come in. Well, originally we heard 2022, but then we heard probably more likely 2023. But
Yeah,
we
it's a
didn't
little
know
late
real
for us. We're already
insight to it. We also heard there may be tools to, if you load the data, like it was said, everything gets loaded at the initial revision A. There may be a way to change the Rev A to a Rev C, but again, we have not seen those yet. So I go back to my original statement. There is no good way to really load data to the cloud, but it should be coming at our time. But I think it should be here already as well. So
I think the last I heard was 23 FD01 they were talking now.
Gotcha.
Hey, Jared, this is Mike Farley. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. I know you're talking about migrating to the cloud, and I think we're all talking about to the DS public cloud. Is that what you're talking about, or talking about data migration onto a hosted system?
Yeah, I guess that's a good clarifying point, Mike. In general, we've got, I say cloud as a general term, we've got our collaboration servers, both master and file collaboration servers hosted by AWS and Azure and that kind of thing.
So in that case, I would say there have been a lot of data migrations done for, we would consider that an on-prem system, even though it's not your prem.
Yeah,
It's not the DS public cloud. So that in that regard, I think there are a lot of people, even on this call, that have a lot of experience with migrating data using the on-prem tools.
Okay, anybody on the call successfully migrated data and using an operational system? By operational, I know that's
Yeah, so I mean, Mike, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, when we were saying it's very limited, we meant the 3DX public cloud. If you are on a hosted cloud, there are ways to migrate data to it, and yes, there are definitely successful case studies, companies out there that have migrated data to it. So it's doable. Again, it takes work, it's an effort, but that is very doable. There's a lot more options out there to load data to on-premise or individually hosted 3D experience environments. It's the DF public cloud environment where it's very limited. So
Yeah,
we may want to take the topic offline and go into more details of what can and cannot be done and where issues lie. So
I'm just wondering if
maybe
anybody's
specifically we
successfully
can leave
using
it.
this platform. We're having
What's the
so
question?
much trouble with it in general that I'm wondering if anybody is successfully using it of any kind of size and migrated data.
Yeah, this is Eddie from Lippert, working with XLM and Inflow for the last X number of years. We migrated from a Smart Team environment in 2016, and we're using it daily since. We have about 12 terabytes of SolidWorks files, change management, EC part management, all the quality modules, supply chain request for quote. Yeah, it's on premise. It's currently in process
sure.
of going to Amazon Cloud.
How many users approximately are in there?
575.
575. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What kind of CAD software are you using?
SolidWorks.
Specifically? SolidWorks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be good to link up, I think, because we are struggling to the point of we are stopping managing SolidWorks data in the platform.
Yeah, I think
I can help arrange that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Would really appreciate
And
it.
I mean, in all, clarity, Ed from Lippert is using the older Designer Central integration versus the newer UPS.
Good point.
So keep that in mind. But regardless, Lippert is a great example of migrated data and successfully using the platform. So definitely, Mike, or I could help connect individuals on this call.
Appreciate that.
So
yeah,
next
this is Keith at Draper. We've also done it. Mark helped us out to do a big migration of our SolidWorks data into 3DX, and we're in production, and it's working great.
Was that DEC or UPS? Mark, do you know?
DEX.
Go DEC.
So the question is really,
You were doing great till right then.
the key question is what customers who are using UPS powered by to manage SolidWorks CATIA data are doing it successfully today. So that's the key question.
I know there's 3 customers and they're all new startups and they have 2 users.
Yeah. And again, we have customers that are smaller customers, or I wouldn't say smaller customers, large customers with smaller groups doing it, and it's working for them, but again, under 10 users. So
yeah,
and I can't say how large their assemblies are either. So
But I can say, this is Mark, this is even Mark's colleague. We do have one large customer. It's in terms of business, it's not from your channel, it's from the business transformation. But they have scale of hundreds, about 600+ SolidWorks users. They're on deck. They migrated from Smart Team. We worked with them a few years back. However, they're seriously looking into mapping processes. It's a very long process. It's a big company. It's going to take them probably a few years, but they're in the midst of looking at UPS. They are evaluating it. There's definitely gaps and differences between. They're already on deck for quite a few years on Designer Central. and they are looking at this. Obviously there's some positive and negative thing. They're in their case, they're in the medical devices, some more limited out of the box stuff, and they're also looking at the cloud, believe it or not. And today they're kind of customized, so there's some limited industry related stuff, but from a basic functionality, there's a lot of stuff that they like, and they have assemblies that can tell you something like 16, 17,000 parts in them, some of them, and they're able to open stuff and load it. Now, again, it's 1 or 2, maybe 4 testers dedicated for this project, very early in the process, but there is traction. And now, whether they may, once more user come on board, they may change their mind, and there's still a lot of gaps also, like I said, from an industry standpoint, but there is some traction that we're, also from larger companies. I think the migration could be an issue. What we've seen often is, if you start out of the box, nowadays, 3 years ago, that would be different, 4 years ago, a different story. Today, it's fairly stable. It can deal with large assemblies and stuff, but it's the migration that you really need experience. And I can say, to be transparent with Excel, we learned the hard way through many years of migrations where you might think the out of the box doesn't work well, but it's really one tiny missing attribute on some objects that is now killing you, or either performance or because the system is looking for it, it's not there, it goes to a different path in the algorithm, and then your system is dead, right? On top of architecture performance. So, I would separate the data migration, which is one, a little bit of a heartburn, when you want to implement a new system, from just the UPS by itself, the actual new SolidWorks integration by itself, which I think today is a lot better than it was, 4 or 5 years ago when it started. So.
I'll say something for 30 seconds real quick. My experience at UPS, myself and my team here, spent a lot of time on it. We believe it's a good path to go. And we vetted it, and it seems like it's going to be successful for Lippert. We're not there yet. Our biggest gap is we use EC parts through and through. And it's EC part of UPS just isn't there, and I'll leave that alone for now. So DX isn't ready for us.
A couple comments, and I kind of moved to the data migration. So we've been talking about that already, but we'll switch.
Yeah.
I would say, Ed, I was just kind of made aware of a concept of within UPS where you have it's kind of like 2 root nodes. So you have a root node in UPS that represents the CAD structure. And then you may have an additional root node, which contains a lot of the same stuff from the CAD structure that would represent your EC part structure, kind of. So it's 2 nodes, they're all physical products, but one represents the CAD structure and the other would represent your true BOM structure. Maybe a little bit hard to visualize here without any screens, but that was kind of the concept that was told to me of how they're doing it. So it's similar to the old CAD structure and EC parts, but they're all physical products, just 2 structures of physical products, basically.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Something to think about. Anyways, data migration. So different topics that have come up around data migration, and you list what I have here, but people wrote in chat, first thing, smart team migration. So yes, we have successfully, and people on this call can attest to it, migrated data from Smart Team to 3D Experience. There are tools by Dassault with the name of EDAT or STK to do those migrations, but again, they're not straightforward. They're not a simple magic button. They're projects in and of itself to analyze the Smart Team data, clean it up, test and validate the migration paths, and and do it in production. So from a Smart Team migration point of view, and again, be clear, we're not talking about 3DX public cloud. We're talking about on-premise. There are definitely tools to do it. Just pause there for a second. The next question is migrating from, I think what we just talked about, migrate from that Designer Central data model to the UPS data model. So again, Dassault has some tools to do it. It only migrates CAD data. So like in Ed's situation, it wouldn't migrate the EC parts. But Dassault has tools to do a migration from Designer Central to UPS. I think the tools that Dassault have are limited today. And basically the tools are extracting the Designer Central data and then recreating the data in the UPS format. So it's like almost like an export and import into the same system. We believe we can enhance those tools and really handle any situation to migrate from DEC to UPS. But again, it would take additional services, and depending on how complex, configured, customized your Designer Central side of the house is, could make that migration, long, costly, etc.
Mark, I got a
months,
question.
a year, not years, but definitely there would be effort to make it happen. But
That'd be a year.
we feel it's very doable. Go ahead. Yep.
This is Eddie. Have you guys migrated anybody yet from DEC to UPS?
No. The simple answer, no. We've quoted customers, we've analyzed it, but simple answer is no.
Okay. It'll be a year-long project at least.
At least, yes.
At least.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We kind of talked about migrating to DS public cloud. Like we said, there's not a lot of good tools out there today. They should be coming in 2023X. I'm sure they'll still have some growing pains with them, but there's not a lot of options around migrating to the public cloud, the 3D Experience public cloud.
Mark, you mentioned a few times the Designer Central and UPS. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about there. Can you expand on what those mean?
Yeah, so basically before 2017, all of the CAD integrations, including the SolidWorks integration, or everything but the CATIA 3D Experience or the CATIA V6 CAD, was being managed per a module within, called Designer Central. So before 2017, all the CAD data was being managed in this module based on Designer Central, which is a data model behind the scenes. Around 2017, 2018, Dassault released, you might have heard, the Powered by data model. So it is a newer data model, and it's kind of based on this CATIA V6, CATIA 3D Experience data model. So any customers who started implementing 3D Experience around 2018 or later most likely went with the UPS or the Powered by data model to manage their CAD versus the older technology, which is Designer Central. So though, as it appears from this call, the companies that are on the Designer Central data model today are having more success managing their data than the new UPS Powered by data model, which is still going through some growing pains, even though it's probably 4 years old now. The future of Dassault is that Powered by UPS data model. So if you're on it, don't feel bad, because that's the future and that's probably what you should be on. And everyone else probably needs to figure out how to get on it. But at the same time, it sounds like the older model is still a little bit more stable than the newer model.
Is actually working would probably be a way to put that. Any of the companies that are successfully in the Designer Central, they do not upgrade yet. They're not ready.
Yeah.
Hey, Jared, this is Mike again. We do have a customer on the UPS data model using migrated SolidWorks data.
How
They've
big?
got about 100 users, and I know I mentioned connecting you with Ed. I can also connect you with them.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have no idea what we have done, but it's not even close to functional for us.
Yeah.
In
Gotcha.
terms of even getting models downloaded
Yep.
and opened.
Yep.
So just quickly, I'll touch upon this. You know, for data migration, also there needs to be an assessment done. You really need to map your legacy data to 3D experience. It's not like there's going to be a one-to-one mapping. Usually there's not. So there's various mapping exercises that need to happen. There's, depending on what you're running, there's different technologies to load the data. We mentioned, you know, EDAT, custom migration tools. You know, there's some M2L stuff that could be done. You know, there's various technologies out there, and each has its pros and cons. And then the key part, you know, which is probably the most important part, is really testing and validating the data. Probably a lot of people on this call can attest. If you might be able to migrate everything, but if it doesn't work or there's issues with it, you know, the system is, you know, is not good. So really, you know, the key thing is to test and validate the migrated data and make sure you feel very comfortable with it. You know, obviously you can't test everything, but have a good sample and a good number of use cases to test to make sure, you know, that the migrated data will work successfully in your system.
Hey, Mr. Mark, question on that. This is Mike from Boom. When you're testing and validating, are you also doing like a geometry validation as well to make sure that the part didn't change?
That you know, again, it depends on your use cases. That's normally I don't consider that, but yes, I mean, if you're model based and you're doing everything off the models, you know, that is something that you should test and validate. Because, you know, if for some reason the geometry did change, and I've heard even from going from, you know, one version of CATIA V5 to another version of CATIA V5, things have changed. You know, it should be validated. So most customers, I would say, do not do that, but, you know, model-based customers probably need to do that in some sort of fashion, and there's tools out there to do it.
Or Mark, in addition, obviously, part of the migration for CATIA data, if any of your CATIA users, you can, part of the migration, you can upgrade your V5 to 3D experience.
Yes.
Obviously, all handled by Dassault, but it's still, like Mark said, we had aerospace customers that complained that, you know, they had issues with the FAA because they realized that upgrades of V5 itself had issues, and then they had, you know, they were running, you know, bunch of validation tools since it happened. But definitely when you move, if you migrate, and part of that migration, you choose to change, you know, the V5 master sheet to CATIA 3D experience, that's might be even more relevant. Yeah.
Careful with the licensing structure change when you make that upgrade too. It's quite a bit different for named user and versus a floating license kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, we really, and good point too. I mean, we're really coming from a implementation point of view, but I mean, there is a whole licensing, and I'll use the word sales component to it you know, if you're moving from CATIA V5 to CATIA 3DX, to map those license and roles over, and shared licenses versus named licenses, there's definitely some work that needs to be done there too. So yes.
You'll need 2 to 3x times the amount of licenses. One just user story here. So we did migrate data, SolidWorks data in, and we did not do a geometry validation. And we did notice it was seemingly at random, but we did notice some small geometry changes, mainly in the fact that I think SolidWorks or, you know, SolidWorks PDM versus 3D experience, I think goes out to a certain amount of decimals. So when you migrate it over, they kind of got truncated. So we noticed really slight shifts, but you know, blown up mates and stuff like that because of those geometric shifts and that kind of thing.
We have a customer I don't think they're on this this webinar. They're using CATIA v5, and they're model based. And when they upgrade, they do a geometric validation against their data because they don't have drawings. So if the model changes, if the mate breaks, they can't use the data, or they can't build off their data, because that's what they're doing. So they spend a lot of time doing that, and they have some automated tools by, I believe, and I don't know the details. I can find out the details if anyone's interested. But I think there's automated tools by Elysium and some other companies to validate and compare migrated data versus non-migrated data. So it's an interesting topic that, again, we could elaborate on more if people are interested.
Yeah, I can add on to that if you want me to, because I know the customer you're talking about. I was there, so we definitely use 2 different forms of geometry validation just to prove it out. But even we automated the automated tools.
Guys, is this just a SolidWorks problem, or is it a general CAD problem?
I mean, for our other customer, it's a CATIA issue. So, it sounds like it's multi-CAD related.
I really think it's more where you are storing the data. If you're going to pull data out of one system and put it in another, that is when you need to do a geometric validation. And like I said, I think it's because the databases are, taking geometrical data out to a certain amount of, 3D location type decimals is what we saw. Our part was located, 3/100ths of an inch, in the x-axis, difference or something like that, right? So it's just some kind of locational data that we saw that was different between the databases.
So the other thing that we found was sometimes between the different versions, the calculations inside of the tool itself would make a slight change.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So just good to know.
I mean, it's a pretty, I mean, again, for all your CAD nerds out there, it's pretty interesting topic. There's and also 3D Experience, takes that geometry data, creates a 3D matrix of it and puts it in the database and use that for visualization, moving data around. So you're also, the comment where, it goes to 10 decimal points, or it truncates it to a 9th one instead, could, slight differences, but could have differences, based on how accurate your data needs to be. What's that margin of error? Is it 0.001 or 0.001 type of thing? So it's an interesting topic. Also, real quick before we move on, it was mentioned or asked, could we go to a migration to on-premise first and then on cloud? And in theory, technically, yes, that's doable. We haven't done it yet. I don't know if anyone have done it, but if you want to migrate to the Dassault public cloud, you should be able to migrate to an on-premise and then to the public cloud. But there's still a lot of work there. You got to stand up the on-premise environment. Any configurations you do in the on-premise environment, you got to do in the on-cloud environment, and then test, clean up, refresh. Usually there's multiple cycles in testing. So yes, in theory, it's doable. In practice, it's probably going to be a pain in the butt to do it. But if there's a will, I'm sure there's a will. All right, unless anyone has anything else, we'll move on to the next topic. And I would say time-wise, this is scheduled for an hour, but we can stay on as long as you guys want to stay on and discuss these topics. So these are for mainly this topic is related for non-Dassault public cloud customers, but infrastructure and tuning. So, see what anyone has to say about that. Obviously, cloud can mean different things, whether you have a hosted cloud like Amazon cloud or the Dassault public cloud, or on-premise where you're running your own physical servers. But it can be discussions around that. I'd say there's no magic answer how best, what hardware or servers or how many servers you need. So, there are infrastructure assessments that Dassault can offer. Again, I don't want to comment on how good or bad they are, but they do offer that assessment, maybe as something to start with. We also provide. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mark. This is just one important point to make, and again, we learned this is the hard way. Is this should be a planned, continuous process. So, Mark mentioned, SIS, we do some stuff, but you want to do like a major assessment every couple of years, but you definitely need to continue monitoring, at least on a quarterly basis, make sure you run some, basic Windows tracking. There's some built-in tools, for example, in the indexing tools, running things like JStack, things like that. It's always good to do as a continuous plan, and maybe once a year, every other year, have a mini project of reassessing because sometimes you generate more data. It's a different data model than the legacy system like Smart Team or PDM, Source PDM, and so it's hard. You learn as you go, and different data model. If you have your data managed in one way, it may increase the load on the server or servers maybe more than some other data model configuration. So strong recommendation is to have a yearly kind of major review of your / tuning of your environments as a plan, kind of pre-scheduled activity. We think it helps a lot.
To add to that, I'd say 3 experience for those of you that will not be using the on-cloud, the public cloud, and that's a strong reason to go. The key reason I think to go to the public cloud is you don't need to deal with it. But for those of you, and there's a lot of reasons why you would not go to the public cloud, don't take the infrastructure lightly. 3D Experience is a heavy system. It uses a lot of resources and computer power, and there's various servers and services that go around with it. So, don't take that lightly. As mentioned, you'll need people with skills around Apache and Tommy, which are open source web. Elon, help me out. Web servers that serve out the platform. Network experts, database experts, etc. Probably, in addition to hardware, there may be various tuning that's done on the database side, load balancing to distribute the load across multiple servers, JVMs, Java virtual machines that run the information, etc. So, don't take the infrastructure lightly for those of you that won't be on public cloud. But it's doable. Just you'll need a pretty savvy IT technical person to manage it or get support. Lastly, there may be the debate. It can, versus some other systems, 3D Experience can run on Windows versus Linux. From what I've been told, it probably runs better on Linux because Linux is a lighter operating system. There's less overhead. So I've always been told, if there's an option, go with Linux. But at the same time, most people have Windows experience. At least what I see, most people have Windows experience, and it's easier to find people that know Windows more than they know Linux. So, there's many customers running it on Windows, and the majority of our customers are running it on Windows. So I wouldn't say one is right or wrong. It's company preference. But for a pure performance point of view, I was told Linux is probably the better route to go, for what that's worth. And then we'll probably talk about this a little bit on the next slide. But there's a question about the differences between the So public cloud and on-premise, and as I mentioned, one of the key things is you don't need to worry about any of this infrastructure stuff. You know, the SO is managing it all in their you know, offsite data farms. So this kind of issue goes out the door, which is a key issue. So it's a definitely key benefit, but you do get limited in some of the control and some of the configuration and customization you can do. So you're limited with what you can maybe do with it, but you don't need to worry about any of this infrastructure and tuning stuff. All right, this probably could be another topic that we could spend a whole work group session on, but we talk about collaboration best practices, and we're currently working out and building best practices as we speak. But you know, what always comes up, and again, marketing wise, probably gets marketed like the system can do it, no problem. But when you go to do it, you realize there are some gaps that you need to deal with. So, you know, what's the best way to set up security, collaboration, et cetera? You know, for users that just need read-only, whether they're internal or external users, maybe you're doing joint designs with other companies and you want to invite them into your platform to do joint designs and invite them in a secured fashion. How can you go about doing that? And then that last sub bullet should be exchange data. Maybe you don't want to invite them into your platform, but you want to exchange data with them. You know, send them data from your platform for them to work with, or they send you data back that you can import into your platform. So those are some of the, at a very high level, common collaboration scenarios. And we're open to talk about them in more detail. We have some thoughts and practices around them, but I would say there isn't one key thing that, you know, this is the exact recommended way to do it. P&O setup, you know, probably maybe should have been the first topic, but, you know, what's the best practice around setting up collaborative spaces? How many collaborative spaces should you have? What's that optimal number? You know, should they be private, public, protected, etc.? You know, what roles should users have within those collaborative spaces? So again, you know, there is no immediate right answer. There probably could be better best practices in my opinion, but you know, based on your various use cases, you know, there's some guidelines to follow to how to, you know, at least initially set that up. And if anyone wants to add any input to this stuff, go ahead. And then finally, on top of all that, there's other security aspects that can be implemented or set up or controlled, you know, whether that's using bookmarks to organize your data, the shared data feature to give people explicit access to data they may not have access to, using restricted roles, which kind of goes into a little bit of that joint design from above. And then there's a whole IP security module, which can be used to protect, you know, ITAR data or very specific, you know, security scenarios that you know your company may have. A lot of companies that have to protect ITAR data are using the IP security module. Though we have a customer that's coming from Smart Team that has project level security in Smart Team, and we found the best way to map that functionality over was through this IP security module, which is also additional licenses as well, but it provided the functionality we needed to mimic the functionality through the Smart Team project level security. Anyone wants to talk about this? I mean, a lot of conversations do happen at customers around this topic. So maybe it's getting late in the webinar, everyone's tired, but it probably is a good topic to discuss. I'm sure people have a lot of thoughts, maybe not answers, but questions and thoughts around it. So
it feels like a whole nother webinar.
Yes, yes, and you know, we'll very well may do that. All right, last topic is around customizations and widgets. You know, the key question is, do you customize or not? And then what's that gray area between customization and configurations? So, you know, everyone pushes, you know, out of the box, out of the box, out of the box, and there's a lot of thought and logic and you know, we always say yes, do it out of the box. Though I would say, and this is just my personal opinion, customers that are really successful using PLM, whether it's 3D Experience, Smart Team, SolidWorks PDM, whatever, have done customizations to enhance the product to handle their specific processes that they may have in place. So yes, I always push for out of the box, but I would say if it's not doing something and you need it to do it and it's going to save a user 10 clicks or even save a user 5 minutes a day, if you have 100 users, you know, that's 500 minutes you're saving, and you can, you know, figure out how much, you know, an engineer, you know, costs per minute. Let's say they cost $10 per minute. You know, that's 500 times $10. That's a lot of savings. So, so I believe there is value in customization. If you do want to customize 3D Experience, there's different ways to go about it. Whether you use web services, the EKL language, the older technology around triggers and Java, excuse me, widgets, etc. So again, you know, in the past, everyone used triggers in Java, and there's a lot of expertise out there today in the market. Going forward, newer ways to customize it is using widgets and web services and EKL, which is, again, going through some growing pains, but is very doable. But there's less expertise in the market around it. So depending on what you want to customize, you know, there's always pros and cons to discuss how to best do it. And then finally, you know, 3DX public cloud customization limitations. Yes, I'd say one of the downfalls about the public cloud is the customization limit is very limited on the public cloud. So, you know, you really need to feel comfortable using the public cloud out of the box and really feel comfortable that the out of the box functionality of the public cloud meets your needs. You know, if that's the case, then the public cloud is all for you. If you're going to say, hey, you know, there's certain things that the system works out of the box that will not work for us, then really you should consider a private cloud, a hosted cloud, or an on-premise. The hard part is you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. So, you know, in that case, you really need to do a good assessment to make sure that if you do want to go to the public cloud, that the out-of-the-box functionality does meet your needs. So you need to do some homework up front to really vet out what's the best way to go. And again, to be honest, you know, as much as you vet stuff out, until you get your hands on it, you know, you don't realize how things work, or you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, again, maybe another webinar topic, but, you know, when you're deciding what to go with, public or premise, you know, how do you do that assessment? How do you vet out the systems? Could be a good topic to go into detail in. Any comments, questions?
I'll chime in there, Mark, with that one. You know, getting to your question or comment about, you know, what do you choose, on premise or the cloud? And each one offers pros and cons. When I looked to leave Smart Team and go to another system, there was no cloud environment. Maybe PTC, I'm not sure. But the solution I use to pick the Dassault solution can be used to make the decision now whether a company goes on-prem or cloud. And that is, define your requirements up front. And that takes a long time because you got to interview the departments and you got to kind of work with the execs saying, where's the company going 5-10 years? What do you see the growth at? You put it all together and you basically build your requirement document. And then you contact these PLM providers such as DS and Windchill and so forth. And you contract with them saying, I need access to your system for 3 months. And you put a live data set in there. And to a point, you customize it a little bit or configure it to a point where it's at least usable for your users. And then you get feedback and you get the pros and cons. And basically from that, you develop your matrix that says which one to get. That process, it took me 1.5 years to figure that out over 5 different systems. So
Agreed. I agreed on paper, kind of doing these assessments. It's not rocket science, you define your requirements.
Yep.
But you need to define, truly define your requirements and have them be meaningful requirements that really, mean something. And then, yeah, test, validate, see to believe, trust but validate, to make sure that they, these systems, whether it's on premise or on cloud or something else, are addressing them. And it's not just saying, someone showing you a PowerPoint so that yes, we address it. It's, I really believe see to believe. So,
yes.
And having the users come back, so, and that takes time, effort, and energy. So,
Right.
to do it right, you need to do your upfront homework.
Yeah.
And there's trade-offs, if you don't want to spend 1.5 years, picking a system, then you can't test everything. But just make sure the organization is aware of that. So
Yep.
On a side note, I wrote some blogs about this exact subject, if anyone's interested. But again, we could do another webinar on it. All that being said, in conclusion, we have some upcoming webinars on specific topics. So we have one specifically on migrating data to 3D Experience. We have one that is a customer. We're going to do it jointly with one of our customers of how we implemented 3D Experience for them. We'll talk about some of the best practices and what they did. They're kind of a hybrid approach between Designer Central and UPS. So this might be very interesting. And then we'll do one on project management. So you see the dates, emails will come out about it. We'll do our social media around them. So get notified. But with that, I would say thank you. This has been a great discussion, and there will be a survey after this webinar about some suggested topics. We're thinking about maybe doing this once a quarter, but definitely would love your input, whether we should do it more frequently, less frequently, specific topics you want to go over, et cetera. Really, we're looking for your input on how to improve this and make it useful to everyone on the call. With that, I want to say thank you for joining. It was a great interactive discussion. And unless anyone has anything else to say, we will end this webinar.
Great. Thanks for hosting.
Yep, thank you. All right.
Mark,
Going
this is
once,
really
going.
informative.
Yep. And like I said, if anyone has individual questions, please reach out to me. If anyone who spoke wants to be connected with anyone, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to do it. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, Mark, it's Keith here at Draper. I'm interested in learning a little more about the security model you put in place for the customer with projects. So you want to ring me or?
Yes. I'll send you an email. We can set up a time to discuss that in more detail.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Talk to you later.